The winter wind howled across the Montana prairie like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of snow and memories as Bethany Tucker's wagon rolled into Silvercrest. The year was 1885, and the town looked smaller than she remembered, weathered buildings hunched against the elements, just as they had been when she fled a decade earlier, with nothing but heartache and secrets bundled inside her. A 9-year-old boy sat beside her, his eyes wide as saucers as he took in the town that was in his blood, but not in his memory. Samuel had her chestnut hair and delicate nose, but those eyes piercing blue like a summer sky, those belonged to his father, the man who didn't know he existed. "Is this really it, Ma?" Samuel asked, his small gloved hand gripping the edge of the wagon seat. "Is this where you grew up?" Bethany nodded, her throat too tight for words. 10 winters had passed since she'd left Silvercrest behind. 10 winters of building a life in Colorado, of watching her son grow strong and curious, of wondering if she'd made the right choice. And now, with her father sick and asking for her, she had no choice but to return. "Your grandpa's house is just down this road," she finally managed, snapping the reins to urge the tired horses forward. "And the ranch, your father's ranch, is about 5 miles outside of town." Samuel's eyes grew even wider. "Will we see him, my pa?" The question she'd been dreading for years hung in the crisp air between them. "I don't know, Samuel. It's been a long time." As they passed the general store, Bethany's heart skipped a beat. There, tying his horse to the hitching post, stood a tall figure in a worn leather duster, his broad shoulders and the tilt of his hat unmistakable even after all these years. Owen Patterson, cattle rancher, the man she'd loved since she was 16. The father of her child. He turned, perhaps sensing her gaze, and time stood still. The years between them vanished like morning mist under the sun. Owen's face, more weathered now, lined at the corners of his eyes, froze in disbelief. Bethany's hands trembled on the reins as she drew the wagon to a halt, unable to move, unable to breathe. "That's him, isn't it?" Samuel whispered, his young voice carrying in the quiet street. "That's my pa." Owen stepped forward, his boots crunching in the hardened snow. His eyes, those impossibly blue eyes, moved from Bethany's face to the boy at her side, lingering there as understanding dawned slow and painful across his features. "Bethany?" His voice was rougher than she remembered, catching on her name like fabric on a nail. "Is it really you?" She nodded, unable to find words adequate for the moment. Owen's gaze remained fixed on Samuel, taking in the boy's features with hungry intensity. "And this is your son," she said quietly, the words falling between them like stones in still water. "This is Samuel." Owen's face contorted with emotion, joy, grief, anger, wonder all washing over him in waves. He stepped closer to the wagon, his hand reaching out as if to touch the boy, but stopping short, afraid he might vanish like a mirage. 10 years, he whispered, and Bethany saw tears forming in his eyes, something she'd witnessed only once before the night she told him she was leaving. "I missed everything. I missed your first steps." His voice broke as a tear tracked down his weathered cheek. "I missed your first words." Samuel looked up at Bethany, uncertain, then back at the stranger who was his father. "Ma says I walked early, before I was a year old." A sob escaped Owen's throat, raw and unguarded. "Of course you did," he said with a sad smile. "Strong boy like you." The street around them had gone quiet, townspeople pausing to witness the reunion, though they kept a respectful distance. This was Silvercrest, after all, where everyone knew everyone's business but pretended not to notice when something private was unfolding. "We should go," Bethany said softly. "My father's waiting." Owen nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "Old Doc Tucker's been asking for you for months now. Stubborn man finally sent that letter, did he?" "Yes," Bethany replied. "Is he? How bad is it?" "Bad enough to bring you home," Owen answered, his eyes never leaving her face. "But he's holding on." An awkward silence fell between them, 10 years of unspoken words creating a chasm wider than the miles that had separated them. "Can I come see you?" Owen asked finally, his voice barely audible. "Both of you? There's so much." Bethany hesitated, then nodded. "We'll be at my father's house. You know where to find us." With a final look at Samuel, Owen stepped back, allowing the wagon to pass. As they pulled away, Bethany glanced back to see him standing in the middle of the street, watching them go, his shoulders slumped under the weight of all he'd lost. "Ma?" Samuel's voice pulled her attention back. "Why didn't you tell him about me before?" The question cut deep, as it had every time her son had asked it over the years. "It's complicated, Samuel. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big ones." "Is he angry at us?" Bethany sighed, steering the wagon toward her childhood home. "Not at you, never at you, maybe at me, and he'd have the right to be." "Will we stay here, in Silvercrest?" Another question without an easy answer. "I don't know yet. Let's see to your grandfather first." The Tucker house stood at the edge of town, a simple two-story structure with a wraparound porch and faded blue shutters. As they approached, the front door opened and a woman stepped out. Margaret Holloway, her father's housekeeper for as long as Bethany could remember. "Miss Bethany," Margaret called, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "And this must be the young man your father's been so eager to meet." Bethany helped Samuel down from the wagon, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her father had known about his grandson for years. She'd written to him regularly, sharing news of Samuel's growth and accomplishments, though she'd never received a reply until the letter begging her to come home. "Is he awake?" Bethany asked as they climbed the porch steps. Margaret nodded. "Been fighting sleep all morning, determined to be alert when you arrived. The doctor says it's a miracle he's lasted this long." Inside, the house smelled of pine and medicine, familiar yet changed. Margaret led them upstairs to the bedroom, where Dr. Elijah Tucker had tended to generations of Silvercrest residents before his own health had failed him. The man in the bed seemed a shadow of the father Bethany remembered once robust and commanding, now frail and sunken into his pillows. But his eyes, sharp as ever, brightened when she entered the room. "You came," he rasped, extending a trembling hand. Bethany took it, surprised by how cold his fingers felt. "I came, Pa." His gaze shifted to Samuel, who hovered uncertainly in the doorway. "And you brought my grandson." "Samuel," Bethany beckoned, "come meet your grandfather." The boy approached cautiously, studying the old man with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "You have the look of the Pattersons," Dr. Tucker observed, "but there's Tucker in you too. Strong stock on both sides." Samuel stood straighter at this. "Ma says you're a doctor, that you save people's lives." A ghost of a smile crossed the old man's face. "I did what I could. Your mother has healing hands too, though she chose a different path." Bethany flinched at the subtle accusation. "Samuel, why don't you go with Mrs. Holloway? She can show you around while I talk to Grandpa." Once they were alone, Dr. Tucker's expression hardened. "You should never have left." "I had my reasons," Bethany replied, the old defenses rising automatically. "Fear isn't a reason, it's an excuse." He coughed, the effort shaking his frail body. That boy deserved his father. Owen deserved to know his son. "You don't understand what happened. I understand more than you think." He gestured weakly to a drawer in the bedside table. "Open it." Bethany did as he asked, finding a stack of letters tied with string. "From Owen," her father explained. "One every month for 10 years, asking about you, telling me about his life, hoping I had news." She stared at the bundle, stunned. "You never told me." "You never asked," he countered. "Too busy running." Bethany sank into the chair beside the bed, the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. "I was young and scared. I thought I was doing what was best." Best for whom? Her father's voice was gentle now. "Not for Owen, who's been half a man since you left. Not for Samuel, growing up without a father. Not for you, alone with your secrets." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know how to fix it." Dr. Tucker reached for her hand again. "Start with the truth, all of it. He deserves that much." Before she could respond, footsteps thundered up the stairs, and Samuel burst into the room, his face alight with excitement. "Ma, there's horses in the stable out back. Mrs. Holloway says they belong to the doctor, to Grandpa, and that I can ride one if you say it's okay." Dr. Tucker chuckled weakly. "The Pinto is gentle enough for a boy. Your mother learned to ride on him, though he was younger then." "Can I, Ma, please?" Bethany hesitated, then nodded. Mrs. Holloway can show you, but stay close to the house. As Samuel raced off again, Dr. Tucker's expression softened. He's a fine boy. You did well there, at least. He's the best thing in my life, Bethany admitted. I just wish— It's not too late, her father said. Owen still owns the Double P, built it up into one of the largest spreads in the territory, never married. He paused, studying her face. He waited for you. The knowledge settled in her chest like a stone. After what I did, go to him, Dr. Tucker urged. Before I'm gone, I'd like to see things set right. Bethany stood, leaning down to kiss her father's forehead. Rest now. We can talk more later. He caught her wrist with surprising strength. There might not be a later for me. Don't waste any more time, Bethany. Life's too short for pride. She left him sleeping, his breathing labored but steady, and went downstairs to find Margaret preparing dinner. The housekeeper looked up from her work, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. Your room is ready, she said, and I put a cot in there for the boy unless you'd rather he take the guest room. The cot is fine, Bethany replied, watching through the window as Samuel led the old pinto around the small paddock, his face serious with concentration. He's not used to sleeping alone in strange places. Margaret nodded. He's the spitting image of Owen at that age. Folks will be talking if they aren't already. Let them talk. It's what they do best in this town. A knock at the front door interrupted their conversation. Margaret went to answer it, returning moments later with Owen Patterson in tow, his hat clutched in his hands, his expression a mixture of determination and uncertainty. I know it's soon, he said, his eyes finding Bethany's across the room. But I couldn't wait. Margaret discreetly excused herself, leaving them alone in the kitchen's warm confines. How is the doctor? Owen asked. Failing, Bethany answered honestly, but still sharp of mind and tongue. Owen smiled slightly at this. He never did mince words. His smile faded as he looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the changes 10 years had wrought. You're more beautiful than I remembered. Bethany felt heat rise to her cheeks. At 28, she was no longer the girl he'd known. Her body had changed with childbearing. Her face had matured. Her eyes held experiences he knew nothing about. Owen. No, let me speak, he interrupted gently. I've rehearsed this 1,000 times in my head. What I'd say if I ever saw you again. He took a deep breath. Why did you go, Bethany? What happened? One day we were planning our future, and the next, you were gone without a word. She looked away, unable to bear the hurt in his eyes. I found out I was carrying Samuel. I was scared. Scared of what? Of me? Did you think I wouldn't want our child? No, not that. She struggled to put into words the fears that had driven her away. Your ranch was just starting. You were working day and night to make it successful. My father wanted me to go to medical school in Denver, to follow in his footsteps. Everything was complicated. And then Lily Patterson died. Owen's face darkened at the mention of his mother's death. What did that have to do with us? She died in childbirth, Owen. Your father was destroyed by it. I saw what losing her did to him, to your whole family. Bethany's voice trembled. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving you like that, of our child growing up without a mother like you did. Understanding dawned in his eyes. So you left, because you were afraid of dying? It sounds foolish now, she admitted. But I was 18 and terrified. There were complications with the pregnancy early on. The doctor in Denver said I might not survive the birth. She looked up at him. I couldn't tell you because I knew you would insist on marriage, and then I might have lost you both, Owen finished for her, his voice thick with emotion. But Bethany, that should have been my risk to take, my fear to shoulder. You took that choice from me. I know, she whispered. When Samuel was born and we both survived, I thought about coming back, but so much time had passed. I was afraid you'd hate me for keeping him from you. Hate you? Owen shook his head in disbelief. I've spent 10 years loving the ghost of you, jumping at every knock on my door, hoping it might be you returning. Through the window, they both watched as Samuel guided the pinto back to the stable, his small figure moving with a confidence that belied his years. He's remarkable, Owen said softly. Does he know about me? About us? He knows you're his father. I've told him stories, good ones," she added hastily, "about how brave and kind you are, how you built your ranch from nothing, how you can gentle any horse and read the weather in the clouds." Owen's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I've missed so much." "I'm sorry," Bethany said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. "I made a terrible mistake." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the familiar scent of leather and pine that had always clung to him. "What happens now? Will you disappear again once your father—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Samuel and I have a life in Denver. I work as a midwife there." Owen absorbed this information, nodding slowly. "And is there someone else in that life?" "No," Bethany replied. "There's never been anyone but you." Relief washed over his features. "I'd like to know my son, Bethany. However much time you're here, I'd like to be part of his life." "Of course," she agreed. "He's curious about you. He'll have questions. I'll answer anything he wants to know." Owen hesitated, then asked, "Could I take him riding tomorrow? Show him the ranch? It will be his someday, after all." The implication that the double P would pass to Samuel as Owen's son and heir caught Bethany off guard. She hadn't allowed herself to think that far ahead, to imagine a future where her son might claim his birthright. "If he wants to go, yes," she finally answered. The back door opened and Samuel entered, his cheeks flushed from the cold, his eyes bright with excitement. He stopped short when he saw Owen, suddenly shy. "Samuel," Bethany called, "come say hello to your father properly. He'd like to take you riding tomorrow to see his ranch." The boy approached cautiously, standing tall as he extended his hand the way she'd taught him. "Pleased to meet you, sir." Owen knelt to be at eye level with his son, taking the offered hand gently. "I'm pleased to meet you too, Samuel, though I feel like I've known you forever." His voice caught. "You have your mother's smile." "And your eyes," Samuel replied. "Ma always said I had my father's eyes." Owen glanced up at Bethany, gratitude written across his face. To Samuel, he said, "I hear you're good with horses already." Samuel nodded enthusiastically. "Grandpa's Pinto let me ride him. Ma taught me to ride when I was little." "She was always good with horses," Owen said with a smile. "Best rider in the county, your mother." "Do you have lots of horses at your ranch?" Samuel asked, his initial shyness fading. "More than 20, Owen replied, "including some young colts that need training. Would you like to help with that?" Samuel's eyes widened. "Could I really?" "If your mother agrees," Owen added, looking to Bethany for permission. She nodded, unable to deny either of them this chance to connect. "Just be careful." Owen stood, placing a hand on Samuel's shoulder. "I should go. I've got cattle to see to before dark, but I'll come for you tomorrow morning, if that's all right." "I'll be ready," Samuel promised. After Owen left, with a lingering look at Bethany that spoke volumes about unfinished conversations, Samuel peppered her with questions about the ranch, about Owen, about what life had been like when she lived in Silvercrest. "Was it very hard, Ma?" he asked as they sat down to dinner with Margaret, his face serious. "Raising me by yourself?" Bethany exchanged a glance with the housekeeper, surprised by her son's perception. "Sometimes," she answered honestly, "but you were worth every difficult moment. If you and Pa still love each other, why can't we stay here, be a family?" The simplicity of the question belied its complexity. "It's not that simple, Samuel. 10 years is a long time. Your father and I have both changed, and we have our life in Denver. I like it here better," Samuel declared, "and I like him. He looks at you the way Mr. Henderson looks at his wife." Bethany nearly choked on her stew. Jacob Henderson was a neighbor in Denver, a widower with 3 daughters who had made his interest in Bethany clear over the years. She'd always gently rebuffed him, telling herself it was because Samuel needed her full attention. "You're very observant," she managed to say, "but adults have complicated feelings. Now, finish your dinner and then you should rest. Tomorrow will be a big day." Later, after Samuel had fallen asleep in the cot beside her bed, Bethany sat with her father, reading to him from his favorite book of poetry as he drifted in and out of consciousness. During one lucid moment, he fixed her with a stern gaze. "Owen came by," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she confirmed. "He's taking Samuel riding tomorrow. Dr. Tucker nodded approvingly. Good. The boy needs his father. He paused, gathering strength. Bethany, I need to tell you something. It's about your mother. Bethany stiffened. Her mother had died when she was just 5 years old, of a fever that had swept through the town. Her father rarely spoke of her. What about her? She asked cautiously. I was afraid, he admitted, his voice barely audible. After she died, I was terrified of loving anyone that much again, of losing them. That's why I pushed you toward medicine, toward a life of serving others rather than having a family of your own. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. I thought I was protecting you, but I was protecting myself. I couldn't bear to see you risk what your mother risked. Bethany took his hand, understanding washing over her. So, when I told you I was in love with Owen, I tried to frighten you with stories of difficult births, of women who didn't survive. I planted those fears, Bethany. His grip tightened. And when you ran away, I was too proud to admit what I'd done, too ashamed to bring you home. The revelation struck her like a physical blow. All these years, she'd believed her fears were her own, that her decision to flee had been hers alone. You wrote to me, she reminded him. You sent money for Samuel. Too little, too late, he replied bitterly. I should have gone to Denver and brought you both home. Should have told Owen the truth. My pride cost that boy 10 years with his father. Bethany sat in stunned silence, reassessing the past in light of this new understanding. Why tell me now? Because I'm dying, Dr. Tucker answered simply, and I can't take this sin with me. You need to know it wasn't your fault, not entirely, and you need to make it right, for all three of you. I don't know if I can, she whispered. So much time has passed. Her father's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion claiming him. Love doesn't count years, he murmured. It counts heartbeats. Bethany sat with him until his breathing deepened into sleep, then returned to her own room, her mind churning with revelations and possibilities. Looking at Samuel's peaceful face in the moonlight that streamed through the window, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where they stayed in Silvercrest, where Samuel grew up on his father's ranch, where she and Owen built the family they had once planned. Morning came with a fresh dusting of snow and the sound of hoofbeats in the yard. Bethany helped Samuel dress warmly, smiling at his barely contained excitement. Remember to listen to your father, she instructed as she wound a scarf around his neck. Ranching can be dangerous work. I will, Ma, Samuel promised, then hesitated. Aren't you coming with us? She shook her head. Your grandfather needs me here. This is a chance for you and your father to get to know each other. Disappointment flickered across his face. But we're leaving soon, aren't we? Back to Denver? The question hung between them, heavier than it had any right to be. We'll see, she finally said. Now go on, he's waiting. From the window, she watched as Owen lifted Samuel onto a small bay gelding, adjusting the stirrups with careful attention before mounting his own horse. They rode off together, Owen leaning over to point out something to Samuel, who nodded eagerly in response. He's good with the boy, Margaret observed, coming to stand beside Bethany. Always knew he would be. I've made so many mistakes, Bethany confessed. The older woman patted her arm. We all do, child. The question is whether we get the chance to set them right. Dr. Tucker slept most of the day, rousing only briefly to take some broth and ask after Samuel. By late afternoon, Bethany found herself pacing restlessly, wondering what was taking so long. She'd expected them back for the midday meal. Just as she was considering saddling the Pinto to go looking for them, the sound of laughter reached her ears. She stepped onto the porch to see Owen and Samuel walking their horses up the drive, both their faces alight with matching grins. Ma! Samuel called out as soon as he spotted her. You should see the ranch. There's a big house and stables and a bunkhouse where the cowboys sleep. And Pa let me help with the calves, and I got to ride all over the north pasture. Owen lifted him down from the saddle, a proud smile playing on his lips. He's a natural, Bethany. Takes to ranching like he was born to it. He might have been, she replied softly, in another life. Something shifted in Owen's expression. Hope, perhaps, or determination. Samuel, why don't you take the horses around back? Ask Mrs. Holloway to help you unsaddle them. Once Samuel had led the horses away, Owen stepped closer to Bethany. I need to say something, and I'd appreciate it if you'd just listen. She nodded, wrapping her shawl tighter against the cold. "I understand why you left," he began. "I don't like it, and it hurt more than anything I've ever experienced, but I understand it. Fear makes us do things we later regret." He took a deep breath. "What I don't understand is why you'd leave again, why you'd take my son away now that I've just found him." Bethany looked away. "We have a life in Denver. A life you built because you were afraid," Owen interrupted gently. "But you're not that frightened girl anymore, Bethany. You're a woman who faced her fears alone and came out stronger." "The woman I see before me isn't running from anything." "It's not that simple," she protested. "Samuel has school. I have patients who depend on me." "There's a school here," Owen countered, "and God knows Silvercrest could use a midwife. Doc Tucker can't practice anymore, and the closest doctor is in Helena." She hadn't considered that. The town had grown since she left, and without her father's medical services. "I'm not asking for an answer today," Owen continued. "Just promise me you'll think about it, about staying, about giving us all three of us a chance at the family we should have been." Before she could respond, Samuel came racing around the corner of the house, his face pale with urgency. "Ma, Mrs. Holloway says to come quick. It's Grandpa." Bethany rushed inside and up the stairs, Owen and Samuel close behind. She found Margaret bent over her father's still form, her ear to his chest. "He's breathing," the housekeeper reported, "but it's shallow. He was asking for you, then just slipped away." Dr. Tucker's eyes were closed, his skin ashen against the white pillows. Bethany checked his pulse weak but present and lifted his eyelids to check his pupils. "It could be a stroke," she said, falling back on her medical training. "We need to keep him warm and try to get some water into him when he wakes." "If he wakes," Margaret murmured. Owen placed a steadying hand on Bethany's shoulder. "What can I do to help?" "Ride for the doctor in Helena," she decided. "He might be able to do more than I can." Owen nodded. "I'll leave right away. It's a hard ride, 4 hours at least, but I'll be back by morning with or without him." As he turned to go, Bethany caught his hand. "Thank you." His eyes held hers for a moment, conveying everything words couldn't. Then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the stairs. Samuel approached the bed cautiously. "Is Grandpa dying?" Bethany pulled him close, wishing she could shield him from this harsh reality. "Yes, sweetheart, I think he is." "Like Ma Henderson's husband did? Will he go to heaven too?" "I hope so," Bethany answered, surprised to find tears on her cheeks. Despite their complicated relationship, despite the revelation of his role in her departure, she loved her father. The thought of losing him created an ache deep in her chest. The night passed in a vigil of whispered prayers and dampened cloths placed on Dr. Tucker's forehead. Near dawn, he stirred, his eyes fluttering open to fix on Bethany with surprising clarity. "You're still here?" he whispered. She leaned closer. "Of course I am. Thought you might have run again." His attempt at a smile turned into a grimace of pain. "Always running, my Bethany." "Not anymore," she promised, taking his hand. "I'm staying right here." Satisfaction flickered across his face. "Good. The boy needs his father." His gaze shifted to Samuel, who had fallen asleep in a chair by the window. "Strong boy, good heart." "Yes," Bethany agreed, following his gaze. "He has the best of both of us." Dr. Tucker's breathing became more labored. "Owen?" "He's gone for the doctor in Helena," Bethany explained. A weak chuckle escaped him. "Won't do any good. My time's come." He squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "Be happy, Bethany. Stop running. Love that man while you can." His eyes drifted closed again, but his chest continued to rise and fall in shallow breaths. Bethany sat with him as the room gradually lightened with the arrival of dawn, listening to each breath, knowing anyone could be his last. The sound of hoofbeats announced Owen's return, just as the sun crested the horizon. Moments later, he entered the room, followed by a young man carrying a medical bag. "This is Dr. James Wilson," Owen introduced. He agreed to come right away. Dr. Wilson approached the bed, his expression professional but compassionate. After a brief examination, he shook his head. "I'm sorry, Mrs. "Miss Tucker," Bethany supplied. "Miss Tucker, there's nothing to be done. The stroke was severe, and at his age, he trailed off, then added gently, "He's not in pain. It won't be long now." Bethany nodded, having already reached the same conclusion. "Thank you for coming all this way." The young doctor hesitated. "Dr. Tucker was a legend in these parts. I studied his papers in medical school. His work on childbed fever was groundbreaking." Pride swelled in Bethany's chest, mingled with grief. "He was a good doctor." "The best," Dr. Wilson agreed. "I'll stay until it's over, if you don't mind. Pay my respects." As if hearing their discussion, Dr. Tucker's breathing changed, becoming more erratic. Bethany leaned forward, whispering in his ear, "It's all right, Pa. You can rest now. I'll be all right. We all will." With a soft sigh, Elijah Tucker breathed his last, his face relaxing into an expression of peace that had eluded him in life. Samuel woke at that moment, somehow sensing the change in the room. "Grandpa's gone, isn't he?" he asked quietly. Bethany nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Owen moved to her side, his arm going around her shoulders in silent support, and she leaned into him, accepting the comfort he offered. The next days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and condolence visits. The entire town turned out to pay respects to Dr. Tucker, sharing stories of lives he'd saved and babies he'd delivered. Bethany found herself surrounded by people who remembered her as a girl, who knew her history with Owen, who speculated openly about her plans now that her father was gone. Margaret continued to run the household with quiet efficiency, ensuring that Bethany and Samuel had everything they needed. Owen came by each day, sometimes taking Samuel riding, sometimes just sitting with Bethany as she sorted through her father's papers and possessions. A week after the funeral, Bethany found herself in her father's study, reading through his journal. The entries from the time after she left were particularly painful, his regret and self-recrimination laid bare on the pages, along with his pride in her accomplishments and his love for the grandson he'd never met. A knock at the door interrupted her reading. Looking up, she saw Owen standing in the doorway, his hat in his hands, his expression somber. "Margaret let me in," he explained. "She said you've been in here all morning." Bethany closed the journal. Just trying to understand him better. He was complicated. Owen stepped into the room, glancing at the shelves of medical texts that lined the walls. "Aren't we all?" He took a seat across from her, setting his hat on the desk between them. "I've been thinking about what happens next, for all of us." "So have I," Bethany admitted. "And," he prompted when she didn't continue. She met his gaze directly. "I don't want to leave again. I don't want Samuel to lose his father now that he's found you. But I'm not the same woman who left 10 years ago, Owen. I've built a life of my own, learned to rely on myself. I can't just disappear into your world." "I wouldn't want you to," Owen replied. "The woman you've become is even more remarkable than the girl I fell in love with. Stronger, wiser." He leaned forward. "Silvercrest needs a midwife, Bethany. You could continue your work here." "And what about us?" she asked, her heart racing. 10 years is a long time." "Some feelings don't change," Owen said softly. "Not the ones that matter." Bethany thought of her father's last words, of Samuel's joy in finding his father, of the weight that had lifted from her own shoulders since returning to Silvercrest. Perhaps it was time to stop running, to face the future instead of hiding from it. "I'd need my own place," she said slowly. "Somewhere to live and see patience." Hope dawned in Owen's eyes. "You mean you'll stay?" "I mean, I'll try," she clarified. "For Samuel's sake, at least to start. The rest, we'll have to see." Owen stood, moving around the desk to kneel beside her chair. "That's all I'm asking for. A chance, Bethany. A chance to be the family we should have been all along." He took her hand, his touch sending the same flutter through her stomach that it had when she was 18. Some things, it seemed, truly didn't change. "One day at a time," she agreed, allowing herself to smile. "We have a lot of catching up to do." 2 months later, Bethany stood on the porch of her new clinic, watching as Owen and Samuel rode up together, their faces flushed from the spring air. The building, once a dressmaker's shop, now housed her midwifery practice on the first floor, with living quarters for her and Samuel above. The town had welcomed her return with open arms, especially the women, who no longer had to travel to Helena for medical care. She had already delivered 3 babies and treated countless minor ailments, earning a reputation as skilled and compassionate as her father had been. Owen dismounted, helping Samuel down before tying both horses to the hitching post. "How was your day?" he called as he approached. "Busy," she replied. "Mrs. Jensen had her baby a healthy girl." Samuel raced up the steps. "Can I see inside the clinic, Ma? You said I could help organize the medicines sometime." "After dinner," she promised. "Go wash up first. You smell like horses and cattle." He wrinkled his nose but obeyed, disappearing inside. Owen took his place on the step beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. Bethany turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "That sounds serious." "It is." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small wooden box. "I've been carrying this around for 2 months, waiting for the right moment." Her breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a single pearl. "I bought this for you before," Owen explained. "Kept it all these years, hoping someday I'd have the chance to give it to you." He took her hand. "Bethany Tucker, I've loved you since we were children. I loved you when you were gone, and I love you even more now that you're back. Will you marry me, finally, and make our family complete?" Tears blurred her vision as she looked at the ring, at his hopeful face, at the life he was offering her. A life she'd once run from in fear, now embraced with open eyes and an open heart. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you, Owen Patterson." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then leaned forward to kiss her their first kiss in 10 long years. Yet somehow familiar and new all at once. The sound of the door opening made them break apart. Samuel stood there, his eyes wide, taking in the scene before him. "Are you two getting married?" he asked, his voice rising with excitement. Bethany laughed, holding out her hand to show him the ring. "Yes, we are. How do you feel about that?" Samuel launched himself at them both, his arms wrapping around their necks in an enthusiastic embrace. "I knew it. I told Mrs. Holloway you would. Does this mean we're staying forever? Does this mean I can live at the ranch?" Owen ruffled his hair. "Yes to both, if that's what you want." "It's what I want more than anything," Samuel declared. "A real family, all together." Over his head, Bethany's eyes met Owen's, a silent promise passing between them. The years apart couldn't be erased, but their future together stretched before them like an open road, full of possibilities. 3 weeks later, they were married in the small church where Bethany had been baptized, with Samuel standing proudly beside them and the entire town in attendance. Margaret cried openly, declaring that Dr. Tucker would have been so pleased, while Dr. Wilson, who'd returned for the ceremony, raised a toast to new beginnings. As spring melted into summer, Bethany divided her time between her practice in town and life at the Double P, where she, Owen, and Samuel were building the home they'd been denied for a decade. The ranch flourished under Owen's careful management, with Samuel learning the business at his side, absorbing every lesson with the eagerness of a boy who'd found his place in the world. On a warm evening in August, Bethany sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold. Owen joined her, settling into the chair beside hers, their hands automatically finding each other. "Samuel's asleep," he reported. "Wore himself out helping with the new foal." Bethany smiled. "He loves it here, loves being with you." "And I love having him here," Owen replied. "Every day I discover something new about him. Yesterday he told me about the time you both got caught in that blizzard in Denver, how you delivered a baby in a stranger's house when you couldn't make it to the hospital." "He remembers that?" Bethany was surprised. "He was only 6. "He remembers everything," Owen said. "He's been telling me all the stories of your life together, filling in the gaps." His voice softened. "It helps, somehow. Knowing about the years I missed." Bethany squeezed his hand. "We have so many years ahead of us. All 3 of us, together." 4, soon enough, Owen corrected, his eyes dropping to her midsection, where the first subtle swell of pregnancy was just becoming visible. Bethany placed her free hand over her belly, thinking of the child growing within a child conceived in love, who would be born into a complete family. Samuel had been overjoyed at the news, already planning all the things he would teach his younger sibling. "Are you scared?" Owen asked quietly. "About the birth?" She considered the question, remembering the fear that had driven her away so long ago. "No," she answered truthfully. "I've delivered too many babies to be afraid anymore. And I have you this time." Owen lifted her hand to his lips. "You have me forever, Bethany Patterson. Nothing will ever separate us again." As the last light faded from the sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one above their land, their home, their future. The road that had led them here had been long and winding, marked by separation and heartache. But it had brought them to this moment, a family reunited, stronger for having endured the years apart. Inside, Samuel slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that both his parents would be there when he woke. In town, Bethany's clinic stood ready to serve the community that had welcomed her home. And here, on this porch, a man and woman who had loved each other across a decade of absence held on to the present with grateful hearts, no longer afraid of what tomorrow might bring. When their daughter was born the following spring, a healthy, strong lunge girl, with her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined chin, they named her Hope, for all that had been lost and found again, for the promise of a future that once seemed impossible. And as Owen held his infant daughter while Samuel leaned against his side, both of them watching Bethany with matching expressions of love and wonder, he marveled at how life had come full circle. He had missed his son's first steps, his first words, his first everything, a loss that could never truly be recovered. But here, now, he had been given a second chance, a new beginning. "I won't miss a moment," he promised, whispering the words into his daughter's tiny ear as she slept against his chest. Not a single moment. Bethany, watching from her bed, smiled at the three people who made her world complete. "None of us will," she replied. "We have all the time in the world." And in the years that followed, as Samuel grew into a fine young man who eventually took over the running of the Double P, as Hope blossomed into a spirited girl with her grandmother's healing hands, as two more Patterson children joined the family twins, a boy and girl named after their grandparents Owen and Bethany kept that promise. They cherished every moment, every milestone, every memory created in the life they had built together. The town of Silvercrest grew and changed around them, but some things remained constant: the beauty of the Montana sky, the rhythm of ranch life, and the love of a family that had overcome 10 winters of separation to find their way back to each other. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep and the house was still, Bethany would take out her father's journal and read his final entry, written the day before he sent the letter that brought her home. "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not boast, it is not proud. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails." He had been right after all. Some things were worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth coming home for. And as she closed the book and went to join Owen in their bed, Bethany Tucker Patterson thanked whatever fate or providence had given them this second chance, this opportunity to heal old wounds, to right old wrongs, to build the family that had always been meant to be. In the end, it wasn't the years apart that defined them, but the lifetime together that followed a lifetime of love, laughter, tears, and joy, shared by two people who had found each other again across time and distance, and the children who completed their circle of love.